everyone, this is Marika and I welcome you all to this new session of Nursing Management with me. In our previous sessions, we have discussed about hospital, we have discussed the different objectives, scopes and organization and function of the hospital. We also discussed about emergency and casualty services. Today, in this session, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, which is disaster and different types of disaster. In the upcoming sessions, we will also be discussing about disaster management. Now, before we move on to today's topic, we need to understand what exactly the term disaster means. Let us see in detail what is a disaster. Disaster is a very common term for all of us, but what exactly the term disaster means? Disaster is a catastrophic occurrence that causes various impact on the public health or on the health of the public. So disaster is a catastrophic event or an occurrence. What does the term catastrophic means? Catastrophic means causing severe sudden damage. We already know that disaster causes severe and it causes sudden damage to the life of the human beings, to other living organisms as well as the non-living things around us. So disaster is a catastrophic event that results in profound impact on the health of the public. Whenever disaster occurs, there are destructions that are caused. Disaster is destructive event. It is a destructive event that requires emergency resources from different sources in order to help the community, society, state, or the nation to overcome the disaster. Disaster is an event that causes sudden and great damage to the health of the people, to the health of animals and plants, as well as it causes damage in our entire environment. It is a destructive event. Overcoming the disaster or managing the disaster requires the help of the people outside the particular community or the society. In times of disaster, emergency resources are required. Now, we also have to understand, being in a health sector, that whenever disaster occurs, mass casualties can be seen. Therefore, health sector is one of the most important part in disaster management. But health sector alone cannot do anything in order to reduce the severity of the disaster. There are different organizations within the community. There are different group of people who work together in order to uplift a particular community, society, or a state to help them overcome the disaster. Local communities, the army, the police, the health sector, the forest department, fire brigade, government organization, non-governmental organizations, voluntary organization must come together, work together in order to minimize the severity of the disaster. What do we understand by this? We understand that disaster management requires intersectorial approach, or we can also call it as multi-institutional approach. One single institution or one single sector cannot tackle the disaster situation all alone. It requires the help from every different sector, and all of the sectors come together, work together in order to minimize the effect of the disaster. In times of disaster, the casualty or the emergency department is one of the most important department within the hospital. Therefore, the emergency department has to function very effectively in order to meet the demands and the needs of mass casualties. I hope you've got a basic idea about what is a disaster. Let us move on and see the definitions of disaster. The very first definition is displayed here on the screen, and it says that disaster can be defined as any occurrence that causes damage, ecological disruption, loss of human life, and deterioration of health and health services on a scale that is sufficient enough to warrant an extraordinary response from outside the affected community or area of disaster. So this definition defines a disaster as any kind of occurrence that causes loss of human life, ecological disturbances, causes damage, it deteriorates the health of the people and also damages the health sector. This disaster is so severe or so intense that the affected community will require the assistance outside the community in order to help them overcome the disasters. From the introduction itself, I have been saying the affected community requires help from the other community. They are not able to overcome the disaster that they have undergone by themselves. Another definition is here on the screen. Again, this definition explains the same thing about the disaster, saying that it is an event which disrupts the human ecology and it cannot be observed or it cannot be dealt by the affected community itself. When we take any affected community, the particular community which has undergone a disaster also has its resources within the community. When disaster occurs, the resources within the community is also damaged. Therefore, the community requires the help outside the community to help them overcome the disaster. It is the disruption of human ecology. Here is another definition of disaster. This definition says that a disaster is a man-made or a natural event. So this definition says that a disaster can be either man-made or it can be natural. This disaster causes destructions and devastation so severe that it requires assistance to overcome the sufferings of the disaster. These are some of the definitions of disaster. I hope by now you've understood what is a disaster. Moving on, let us discuss the types of disaster. There are several types of disaster which causes harm to human life, not just human but any living organism, and it also disturbs the physical environment of human beings, animals and plants. As I said, there are different types of disaster, and here today we are mainly going to discuss 5 different types of disaster. The first one is sudden onset disaster. So what is a sudden onset disaster? From the term itself, we can understand any disaster which is sudden in its onset can be called as sudden onset disaster. This disaster can also be called as geological or climatic hazard. The examples includes the earthquake, tsunami, flood, storms, volcanic eruption, landslides, etc. The second type of disaster is slow onset disaster, and the examples for slow onset disaster includes desertification, famine, drought, environmental degradation, etc. The third type of disaster includes industrial or technological disaster, which means the disaster that can take place within a particular industry because of some technical fault. For example, failure of a system. The next type includes wars and terrorism. The fifth type of disaster that can be seen is epidemics, which may include various diseases such as food and waterborne diseases, vector-borne diseases, etc. So these are the 5 different categories of disaster, which includes the slow onset disaster, the sudden onset disaster, wars and terrorism, epidemic, and industrial and technological disaster. Moving on, let us discuss the very first type of disaster, which is geological and climatic disaster. Geological and climatic disaster includes the natural disaster, the disaster that occurs by the force of nature. The very first and the most common disaster that occurs naturally is earthquake. Now, what is earthquake? We are already aware that earthquake is the violent shaking of the surface of the earth. Now, why does the shaking of the earth's surface occurs? It occurs due to the movement of the plates on the earth's surface against each other. So we are already aware that there are tectonic plates under the surface of the earth. It causes vibration, it produces vibration, and that sudden tremor or vibration is called as earthquake. Earthquake is one of the most common natural disaster that occurs, and the intensity of the earthquake varies according to the movement of the tectonic plates on the surface of the earth. The earthquake is measured in terms of magnitude, wherein in the Richter scale, if it indicates the magnitude of 2.5, it refers to minor tremors in the tectonic plates of the earth. But the magnitude of 7 and higher than 7 refers to the major tremors of the earth's surface. The magnitude of the earthquake differs from one event to another. When the magnitude of the earthquake is 7 magnitude and above 7 magnitude, then it is obvious that because it is a major tremor of the earth's surface, it causes mass destruction or vast damage in the environment. You all must be aware about the earthquake that happened in the year 2005 in Kashmir, which killed thousands of people in Kashmir and Pakistan. Also, the buildings and the infrastructures were totally destroyed. Moving on, let us see the effects of earthquake on environment. What kind of effects do we see on our environment? We see that during the time of earthquakes, the buildings, the physical infrastructures collapse. That is the first effect on the environment. As the physical structure in the environment collapses, it also causes damage and loss of human and animal life. The villages and the buildings develop cracks in them, and the buildings, the houses become inhabitable for the people. Another effect of earthquake on the environment is it uproots the plants and trees. So we are already aware that there is sudden movement of the tectonic plates on the surface of the earth. As the trees and plants are planted on the surface of the earth, the uprooting of the plants and trees can be seen because of the earthquake. The next effect of earthquake is decaying of bodies. The dead and decaying bodies causes pollution. It spreads various diseases within the community. And finally, the effect of earthquake also includes psychological trauma for the people who survived earthquake, and also minor to major deformities can be seen in the people who survived the earthquake. So these are the various effects of earthquake on human life. The next natural disaster is flood. Among all the natural disaster, flood is considered as one of the most damaging disaster that causes loss to human life, animal life, as well as to the physical environment around. Now, why does flood occur? Flood occur due to the continuous rainfall over a particular region over a period of time. As the rainfall increases, the levels of the rivers increase, and it submerged the surrounding area, causing loss of life of human, animals, plants, as well as damaging the physical infrastructure. Let us now see the effect of flood on the environment. The very first effect is that it causes loss of human and animal life. The second is that it causes damage to the physical environment or the physical infrastructure such as building, roads, bridges, etc. The third thing it does is also damaging the crops, the agricultural crops. And finally, it also causes shortage of food, water, as well as electricity. Another major effect of flood, as I said, is related to shortage of water. Water bodies can be contaminated. The source of water can be contaminated after a flood has occurred. Because the contaminated water is reaching out to the people and people are drinking the contaminated water, it may lead to various waterborne diseases as well. Floods usually are seen in plain areas, and it is seen that high mortality rate is associated with flood. Beside fracture and injuries, death of human beings because of poisonous snakes and insects are also seen due to flood, because it is also damaging the environment of the wild animals. It is also damaging the environment of the snake and insect. In such cases, the snakes and insects are all washed out from their particular environment to the place where human beings are living. So they can bite human beings, and therefore the death of people related to snake bites and insects are also common during flood. The next natural disaster that we are going to discuss is a landslide. Now, landslide is also one of the common disaster that can be seen. It is one of the natural disasters. So what is a landslide? A landslide is a downslope movement of a mass of a rock or a swell. The mass of rock or swell that moves down or that slides down may be fast moving or slow moving, and it can cause various effects on the health of human beings, and it may kill several human beings as well. In India, the landslides can be seen over the Himalayan regions or the Western Ghats, mostly around that region. Now, flood can occur because of continuous rainfall over a period of time, especially in the Himalayan regions. The landslide may be caused due to heavy rainfall. Floods, earthquakes, cyclones are also responsible for causing landslides. Let us now discuss the effect on environment. The landslide may block the road, it may bury the building, it may cause harm to human life, it also disrupts the water supply, it may disturb the power supply as well as communication services. The next natural disaster that we have is drought. Now, what are droughts? Droughts are caused because of shortage of rainfall over a period of time in a particular area. As there is absence of rainfall for a prolonged period of time, the land dries up, the vegetation is disturbed, and therefore it has ill impact on the health of human as well as animals. Drought is a natural phenomena, it is a natural disaster, but we also have to understand that various human activities can also lead to drought, such as deforestation, globalization, climatic changes, industrialization, etc. So all of these are the factors that may lead to drought. Moving on, let us see the effects of droughts. Droughts causes desertification, shortage of food, water and power supply. It may also lead to death and starvation of the people within the community. And the major consequences include famine and desertification. Drought in a particular area may lead to various diseases such as protein, energy, malnutrition because of lack of food and water supply. It may also cause nutritional diseases such as vitamin A deficiency and other diseases which may include measles, acute respiratory infections, diarrhea, dehydration, etc. The next one we have is volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions are also natural disasters. In order to understand how volcanic eruption occurs, we have to understand about Earth's surface. So deep within the Earth's surface, it is very hot. The temperature is very high. Now, because of this high temperature deep within the Earth's surface, the rocks surrounding that particular area melts and slowly forms a thick flowing substance called magma. Since the magma that is formed is lighter than the solid rock around, it slowly starts to rise above the Earth's surface. As the magma rises above the Earth's surface, it collects in the magma chamber within the Earth's surface. As we know that the volcano has a vent or an opening, the molten form starts to rise up, and from the vent, it slowly pours out of the vent to the outer surface of the Earth. So volcanic eruptions also causes various damages because of the high temperature of the lava arising out of the volcano. It may cause loss of human life and it may also destroy the physical environment around. The next natural disaster that we are going to discuss is a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones can also be called as hurricanes, and cyclones and tsunami causes various damages to the life of human beings as well as plants and animals. From all the marine hazards, tsunami is considered as the most destructive marine hazard. Let us now see the effect of cyclone and tsunami. The cyclones and tsunamis usually occur on the coastal regions. Therefore, it wipes out the entire coastal areas. The villages, the houses in the coastal areas may be wiped out because of tsunami or cyclone. It also causes soil erosion, thereby making the soil infertile. Of course, cyclone and tsunami causes loss of human, animal and plant life, and tsunami and cyclone are also responsible for spreading diseases in coastal areas. These are various natural disasters that can be seen. Now let us move on and see the man-made disaster. The very first one is a nuclear warfare. What is nuclear warfare? Nuclear warfare is when human beings use nuclear weapons such as bomb, which results in disaster. So a nuclear warfare may include throwing the bomb up in the air, which produces blast, which produces heat as well as radiation. So a blast is an increase in the air pressure, the sudden increase in the air pressure when the bomb is thrown out in the air. So when the bomb is thrown out up in the air, it produces blast. Now the blast produces certain waves which shatters the buildings, which may harm the buildings. It shatters the buildings, the windows, the glasses of the houses. So at the time of bomb blast, people are hurt by falling buildings, they are struck by the flying glasses from the windows, etc. The victims may suffer from injuries, bruises, burns, sprains, fractures, etc. The second thing that is produced during a bomb blast is a heat. So the sudden flash of intense heat can cause problems in the skin, in the human bodies, not just to the people who are nearby the bomb blast area, but also miles away from the particular area. And the third thing that is produced during a bomb blast is a radiation. Radiation that is similar to the one that is produced during the time of X-ray is also produced during the time of nuclear explosion. The radiations are capable of causing various diseases in the people, not just in the particular area, but miles away from it as well. The second man-made disaster is the biological warfare. What is biological warfare? Biological warfare is the use of biological agents such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, with an intention to kill or harm the people as an act of war. So biological warfare is also one of the man-made disaster. The third one that we have is chemical warfare, and chemical warfare, as the name suggests, is the use of chemicals such as mustard gas or nerve gas with the intention to kill or harm the people. These are few of the man-made disaster, which includes nuclear warfare, biological warfare, and a chemical warfare. That is it for today's session. In this session today, we have discussed about disaster, wherein we have seen what is a disaster, what are the different types of disaster, and we have discussed in detail about the natural and the man-made disaster. I hope the class was helpful, and I'll see you all in the next session. Thank you and have a great day ahead.